Hi and welcome back. In this tutorial we're going to follow on with making our kit from the sliced beatbox sample, and we're going to have a look at an open hi-hat. Now this open hi-hat is not going to be anything like as versatile as the closed hi-hat was. We were kind of lucky with the closed hi-hat, and also closed hi-hats are a much shorter sample, so it's not as essential to get the right source sound to begin with. So you could do a lot with that. Whereas the open hi-hat is a much longer sound, and with some of the more popular drum machines like the Roland TR-909, they actually used samples of real drum sounds, open hi-hats and cymbals. We don't actually have a sample that sounds like an open hi-hat, but what we do have is a clap sound, which is kind of similar once you start filtering it and things like that. And some of the older drum machines actually used a bit of white noise through a filter to make hi-hat sounds. Now that sounds a lot more artificial and synthetic, but it's still perfectly usable depending on the type of track you're trying to do. And so in a sense what we're going to do here is going to be a bit closer to that, because these clap sounds are maybe like a little bit of a burst of white noise. So we can do a bit with it, and really just looking at the parameters that are available to us, such as the filter settings, the volume envelope, the pitch envelope, the compressor, the reverb. A lot of these things are really quite general and can be applied to any sound that may work as an open hi-hat. So really that's the most important thing with this tutorial, is we're really looking at what you can do to an open hi-hat. We're not really trying to create the perfect open hi-hat or anything like that. Just like I said in the closed hi-hat tutorial, really the idea is once you start getting these sounds into a mix, you want to start playing with them and changing them about. You don't want it to stay static. So we're just going to really go over some of the settings you can change on an open hi-hat to make it a bit more usable or versatile. So to start with, we're going to use the second clap that was in the loop. So not this one here, I think it is. Yep. So I'm going to drag that down here so that it's next to the closed hi-hat, and rename that Control R or Command R on Mac, open hi-hat. Now I might turn it up a little bit, and you can see even just by looking at the region here that it's cut off before it tails out. So obviously the actual sound is longer than a 16th. So we'll just drag that region endpoint a bit further along, just so that it decays out a bit more naturally. And of course we'll change our repeating note clip that will keep it triggering, so we don't have to keep triggering it on the keyboard. We'll change that to play the open hi-hat. Trigger that. Okay, well the first thing to go for is the high pass filter. And we can just sweep through the frequencies. We might keep it around here, somewhere around 4 or 5 kilohertz. And we'll need to turn it up a bit, of course. And I might just chuck a compressor in now, because it'll sort the level out and keep it a bit even. Just make it easier to work with as well. Now in some tracks you could probably use that as a hi-hat. Totally depends on the type of track and what you're doing. But of course that one's quite short and ends quite abruptly, so it's only going to be useful for some things. So by using the loop settings, enable the loop here, and we're going to give the slice a bit more length by looping the later part of the sample, where the tail is, where the natural decay is, because that'll be a bit softer. So we want the fade all the way up because that'll make it smoother, and we're going to turn the sustain down here on the volume envelope, just like we have in the last couple of tutorials. But this time we're going to turn the release up a bit. And you can hear what that does is it allows it to kind of ring out a little bit. And if you were to hit a real open hi-hat with it all the way open, then it would ring out like that. But of course we're not trying to create a real open hi-hat here, but a lot of the hi-hats you'll use on a drum machine or in any drum program, it will have that kind of release on the envelope. So that's a useful parameter to look at when dealing with open hi-hats. So you can play around with the loop settings. You can hear that sounds a little bit more synthetic. And so does that. But around there is not too bad. Now if we were to change the length here and make it really short, you can hear that starts again to make it sound quite synthetic and artificial. But some tracks you might want that, and that might be closer to an older drum machine. Again, maybe even... If you want that kind of really kind of electro-y, techno-y sound, then that could be useful. But we'll just leave it there for the moment. Now another setting that's worth changing is just like we did with the kick. We'll go for a bit of pitch envelope. And what we're going to do is we're only going to turn this up a little bit, maybe up to about 4 or something like that. And we're going to turn the sustain down just a little bit so it levels out a little bit lower. And we'll pull the decay back. Just like with real drums, as we said in the kick tutorial, when you hit it, the pitch raises slightly and then decays quite quickly. Now changing the transpose is another thing we can do. And you notice the loop sounds a lot more noticeable here, so we could try changing that again. And again, really just sweep through it and see what you like. But we'll put it around here because it's less noticeable here. We'll try transposing it even down. And again, you might want to readjust the loop settings. That's a bit better, I think. And maybe put the high pass filter up a little bit more. And now a little bit of reverb, just like we did on the clap and the closed hi-hat. Now that's not too bad, and that could be usable. But we're going to do like we did with the closed hi-hat, and we're going to give it its own reverb. Maybe pull down the size a little bit. And it's a send effect, so we turn the dry wet up. We don't need any dry signal coming through this chain because it's coming through here. Now you can see that reverb makes quite a difference. That helps it a lot. I might try the gate again because I like using gates on these reverbs. It keeps it nice and tight. But we're going to use a bigger release on this and turn the hold up as well. We might need to turn this send up for the gate to open and then just turn this volume down. So that's still got a bit of decay, but then it closes off completely and keeps it quite nice and tight. So let's just try this in context. We'll change this clip around. Press the up arrow. So that's not too bad. Turn it down a little bit. And maybe I'll duplicate that clip. Control D or Command D on Mac. And I'll just Copy the note to create a hi-hat pattern on the closed hi-hat as well. We'll do that a couple of times. So now we can hear it in context. We might want to change one or two of the settings, like maybe transpose. Try panning it a little bit. Maybe even the spread setting. Make it a bit stereo. Maybe pan the closed hi-hat as well. We can pan that here. Oh, that's already panned. Now you notice that even though the open hi-hat's next to the closed hi-hat on the pad view here, in the chain list view they're miles apart. And we can fix this very quickly and easily just by right clicking and choosing sort chains. And you can see now they're next to each other, so that's a quick way of doing that. These chains don't automatically conform to what's going on in the pad view here. You have to do that manually. Alright, well this is sounding pretty okay. I'd use that in some tracks. And you can see just by changing the high pass filter, the loop settings, the volume envelope, the pitch envelope, maybe the spread control to make it a bit stereo, the transpose settings, and a bit of compression and reverb. All of these things can actually make quite a big difference to an open hi-hat, and they're quite useful even if you're starting with a different sample. All of these settings can be useful for open hi-hats. So, that's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.